Okay, so we do want to let people know that thank you for switching over to the other platform. And we're just going to let people register and get on. So if you could just be patient with us for the next few minutes. We'll probably get going in about 5. We're rapidly getting people on, but it's taking us a few minutes to send everyone the email because it has to go individually per person. You guys look like space cadets. You do. And there's a glare, FYI.
Trying to move away from that glare.
Everyone is in quiet mode, on mute, but if you have something you want to say in the chat, please feel free to write it in there and we will happily address it as we go on. But again, thank you so much for being patient and we'll get going in the next few minutes.
I think our internet's going out. Maybe leave the door open. Oh, come on.
Internet issues?
Yes. Oh, he's connecting at Ethernet. Should have done that from the beginning. Sorry, everyone, if you can hear us. Just wanted to let you know that we are using hospital internet. And the bandwidth is terrible, so we are going to hardwire an internet connection to the computer so that we don't get spotty connections with you guys. We can no longer hear anybody.
I can hear you guys fine, and I think everyone can hear you. They just can't respond, so.
Okay.
Someone has asked in the box about can we see their cameras. We can't see you, you can only see us. So on this webinar, you'll just see the presenter speaking and we actually don't have any idea who's actually listening to the call. We can pull up an attendance list after the fact though. So if you can see us and you can hear us, we are on board.
Okay. So I am just going to start then. If you guys can hear us, then we will just go ahead and start the presentation.
Can we wait just a few more minutes? We're at about, let me just look and see how many people we have on.
No worries. That gives us time.
But she said 5 more minutes and she'll get it out to everybody. So
excellent, excellent. So that's
thanks,
actually
guys.
really good. Sounds good. Okay. Dennis might have one too.
Looks like we're getting a lot more people attending. That's awesome. So we're just going to wait a few more minutes. I hope we didn't lose our presenters. I think they just turned their camera off. Okay, so everybody's had a chance to get the email now, so we're just going to wait one more minute and then we'll get going. Just a few things, we just want some housekeeping things. We are going to record this, so if you don't have an opportunity to stay for the entire presentation, we will be sharing it with people after. If you have a request for something in terms of follow-up, please feel free to reach out to your regional manager and they'll happily connect you with the right people. And I think we're having some technical challenges on the hospital's end, so let's see if they're back up and running now. This is called Roll with the Punches, everybody, and we're just gonna roll with it. So let's see where we're gonna go. It says they are offline. I'm going to make it perfectly clear, I am not going to be hosting this webinar in terms of the content. So let's hope that they're going to get back on. Okay, ladies, you're back on. Sorry for the delay, everybody. We're just going to see if we can get them back. Now that we finally got everybody switched over to the right one. Let's see. We're sorry, everybody. This is some technical issues we're having, obviously, and we apologize. We really are trying to get back on track. We're just, oh, here they are. Okay, ladies. Show on the road.
We've got wired internet. Watch out.
Perfect. So thank you, first of all, on behalf of ALS Canada and our clients for joining us today. And so I'm going to let you guys do your introductions because I think that's probably the easiest. And then I'm going to hide my screen as well. And if there's anything, you can also, if you find that your internet's not working as well, hide your screen and then you can just keep doing your presentation.
Because we logged out and logged back in again, I'm not sure. We're not listed as a presenter. So if you could just send me that link again and then we'll be able to share our screen.
Okay, Natasha, can you send that over? She's on the call and she
Perfect. I just got it.
Okay, we're good now?
Yeah. Okay, let's just pull it up. Okay. All right, so everybody can see the screen now and everyone can hear us. Okay, sounds good. All right, I'm not gonna show ourselves here. Just wanted to introduce ourselves. First off, welcome to the Hotel du Shaver Health and Rehabilitation Center, Augmentative and Alternative Communication Clinic. That is quite a mouthful. I just want to thank ALS Canada for this opportunity to share our gems of wisdom from working with people with ALS. Our clinic became an expanded level clinic. So we are 7 years old as a clinic, and we have seen over 100 people with ALS within our clinic and have helped them with their communication needs. Just curious here. Thank you, patients. Okay, perfect. I just wanted to check the chat to make sure that that wasn't a message saying nobody can see you, nobody can hear you, nobody can see your presentation. We are a small clinic, but we're mighty. We take an evidence-based practice approach to communication for many different populations, not just people with ALS. We are always learning new techniques and new tools and the technology that is current on the market now, and we always try to integrate with what is existing on the market. We see all kinds of different diagnoses from the congenital population. We see people with cerebral palsy, autism, Down syndrome, rare genetic metabolic mutations. We see all kinds of people with congenital issues, but we also see people with acquired conditions, such as like multiple sclerosis or acquired brain injury or traumatic brain injury, and then of course people with ALS. To be quite honest, probably the majority of our time is spent with people with ALS. We see people within 2 weeks of referral to our clinic. And just to prelim that a little bit, our AAC clinic is one of 27 clinics in Ontario that provide AAC services. I think there's 5 of them that service adults. The rest of them service the pediatric population. And I know for sure there's at least 4 assessment centers for AAC in Ontario that help people with ALS. And I guess the kind of, when we see people who come into the clinic with ALS, part of our introduction is kind of a message around hope, to be quite honest, and that the phrase that we often say to people is, we want you to take solace in knowing that as your disease trajectory tends to progress, you will always have a way of communicating. And there's always a way, no matter if you have as little as an eye blink, we can, what just happened there? We can get you still communicating with your loved ones. So I'm gonna hand it over to, I didn't even introduce myself.
You should probably do that.
I just hopped right into it. So my name is Nicole Johnson. I'm the Senior Occupational Therapist in our clinic, and I am going to hand you over to Leslie, who is...
Hi, my name is Leslie. I am a speech language pathologist in Hotel du Shaver's Augmentative and Alternative Communication Clinic. I am using my cell phone to demonstrate an alternative way of communicating with others.
Hello, everybody. All right, so we can get right into our slides and get right to it. This is how you switch it. Oh, go on. There we go. Okay. So starting with the basics, what is communication? I always like to explain this before I even get into what augmentative and alternative communication is. So most people consider communication to mean speaking and listening. But it also refers to reading, writing, body language, facial expression, and just the emotional tone that our voice can carry. Communication can also be gestures, drawing, sharing photos, and more currently, communication includes texting, emailing, and social media, whether you're a fan or not. So the term communication is used frequently throughout our presentation. Know that this definition is all-encompassing of the methods we use to exchange information. So we're referring to all of those things that I just mentioned. It doesn't matter. Okay, so what is augmentative and alternative communication? Well, for many of you watching, some of those methods of communication that I just mentioned may already be difficult. So augmentative and alternative communication, or AAC, we may refer to it as that, attempts to use tools, strategies, or devices to support or replace speech and writing. And I like to highlight that we do support speech and writing, or we replace it. It's not one or the other. And it's not just speech that we're looking at. So we're looking at all methods of communication, as I mentioned. We differ in that we do not try to rehabilitate impairments. We're not traditional speech therapists and occupational therapists you might meet in the community, but rather compensate for impairments throughout the course of the disease. So here is an image of some common communication aids we use in a clinic. A communication aid refers to any tool or strategy that helps you to communicate. So a synonym for this may be a device. You may have heard that term before, but we tend to reserve the word device to refer to technology-based systems. We'll be going into more detail about all of these communication aids throughout the presentation, but here is an overview of kind of some of the things we'll be looking at.
So Natasha shared with us some of the frequently asked questions by people with ALS. And so you'll notice that throughout this presentation, you'll see these little speech bubbles that say FAQ, as in frequently asked question. And one of the questions that's frequently asked is, what is a communication aid versus a device? So Leslie just went over that. So as you see these little speech bubbles pop up, you can, if we haven't answered that question, please, write something in the chat, as well as at the end of the presentation, we'll answer any questions that people kind of come up with as we present throughout. So that's an overview of communication of AAC and what a communication aid refers to. So now we're going into the team members and roles, and now these differ by clinic, but traditionally or typically we have the roles listed on the page there, or on the slide there. So my name is Leslie, as I mentioned, and I am the speech language pathologist, or SLP, in our AAC clinic. So in this role, I am responsible for the assessment of current communication skills and future communication needs. So how are you communicating now, and how might you communicate down the road is what I'm looking at. So it's never just the now. The SLP will monitor speech, language, and changes to cognition to decide what strategies, tools, or communication aids may be implemented in a variety of settings. So I kind of touched on this a little bit earlier, but a clinic speech language pathologist like myself does not work on traditional speech therapy or swallow therapy, as you might see in other outpatient programs and whatnot, though we might seek community referrals for this if it is brought up in one of our sessions. So I am the occupational therapist on our team, frequently known as the OT. So I am responsible for assessing how sensory and perception and cognition, vision, your physical ability affect how you are able to use a device that we might prescribe to you. Also how it is placed in space. So oftentimes I'm looking at where you spend the majority of your time, and where could this AAC system that might work for you, where would we need it placed? So sometimes that's, in various places. While you're with us though, sometimes you, people with ALS come up with different issues that are addressed by an OT. So oftentimes I will kind of give some quick education, but then refer on to the occupational therapist that can help you with that, either, you know, at a rehabilitation center or in the community. We also have 3 other members on our team. We have a communication disorders assistant. Her name is Heather. She is responsible for training people on how to use the equipment that we suggest and prescribe. She programs these devices. What I mean by that is that she customizes it based on usually what Leslie has advised, and that's based on talking to the client. So Heather kind of makes sure that all of the things that you want and need are in the system that we prescribe. And then the equipment coordination coordinator technologist is the guy that makes sure that what we give you works. So it's not the type of situation where we give you a device or some kind of strategy and then kind of say, you know, good luck to you. We're kind of your team forever, unless you fire us, of course. But he's the one that makes sure that should something break, that it gets fixed. Should it, you know, stop working, he will troubleshoot that for you. And our equipment coordinator, John, also will remotely connect to our clients to coach them on how to use their systems as well. And he just makes sure that things are kind of working just fine. Unique to our clinic is a registered nurse. We, I think, are the only clinic that has a registered nurse on our team. And our nurse is the liaison between us and the ALS clinic at McMaster. She is the one that is got her thumb on the pulse about what referrals are coming our way, and also just to check in terms of like case management to make sure there's not something happening with her clients that that we don't know of. So how we have organized our presentation was around what questions is everybody asking, but also what are the goals that we set with you when you come into the clinic. And you'll notice that when we're presenting, we're kind of presenting to people with ALS. I'm not exactly sure who our target or who our market is right now or who's out there. I thought I heard that maybe there's some RNs or personal support workers, or family members. We are presenting this as if we are talking to the person with ALS, which is the approach we take if you come into the clinic. However, we are family-based, so we make sure that, you know, everybody is kind of on the same page. So the first goal that we set is around education and information. So as you're probably aware, ALS is a changing condition. So not only do you have you know, current issues that you're dealing with, but the only thing that you can really count on is that things are going to change. So because we've seen so many people with ALS, and the people that we have seen have asked us to share their hard-learned lessons with other people so that they don't have to go through the same struggle, we will often share those gems of wisdom with our clients when they come in to see us. So we're always giving information and education specifically around ALS, and then the timing of what approach is better than others at that particular time, what your AAC options are, as well as funding. So we like to see people very early in the assessment process, and the reason for that is because we want you to be empowered with the information so that you know what's out there before you actually need it. And I think that's really important because that gives you a sense of control in a situation where you feel like you don't have a lot of control. So we like to give you all your information up front, and then you know when it's time to get us back involved. We do like to integrate with your current skills and the technology that you use, such as smartphones in your pocket or laptops or things like that. Because we take a compensation approach, meaning using assistive devices or assistive technology, we are often educating about energy conservation throughout our assessment and treatment. There are funding mechanisms in Ontario. From my understanding, this webinar is for people who are in Ontario. So our services as assessors and as a clinic, everything that we do are funded through basically OHIP. And there is a funding mechanism for the devices that we might prescribe to you. So we have an assistive devices program that is funded through the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care, and they will pay for 75% of the cost of a device. And if you don't have any other funding mechanisms such as Ontario Disability Support Program, then you would be responsible for 25% of the cost of the device plus the HST. We also have a leasing program, which oftentimes we go that approach with people with ALS, because the leasing program was put in place for people who had changing needs. And I think that fits the ALS population very well, because like I said, things change and we want to be able to be responsive to those changes. Although when we prescribe something, we are looking at what you are like at this moment in time in terms of physical and communication, but we're also trying to project where you might be in a year, 2 years from now, and can the device that we're prescribing you adapt with those changes. Some of the frequently asked questions that we felt like fell into this goal were around, will I lose my voice completely? And what I can say to that is that every ALS journey is different. No two people experience it the same way. However, there is some statistics around about losing your voice. Certainly, we have seen people who have kept their voice their entire journey of ALS. However, the majority of the time, probably 80% of the time or more, people do lose their voice. So we like to educate you on when the timing of AAC is best for you, given that kind of statistic. The next one was around, when should I start thinking about a communication device? Like I said, we like to waste your time initially so that you are armed with that information, so that you know when the best time is for you. Because the truth is, it's wrapping your head around a diagnosis of ALS is hard enough, and we're not here to be salespeople. That's not what we do. We're here to provide a service and to fill the need of helping you out to pick something that might fit with you and your lifestyle. But at the end of the day, you have to be ready to and prepared to use that equipment or strategy or device. So when should I start? I would say start your assessment early, and then you have more control over when you actually start using AAC. Mm-hmm. The next question was, what if I'm not interested in AAC? That's fine. You guys, if somebody comes to us and we start assessment with them and they really don't see themselves using this ever or at all, that's fine. We will inform you of what the options are, and we never leave an assessment with somebody who's just not really interested in AAC with, okay, well, good luck to you. We never do that. We always leave the door open because, like I said, this is a journey, and it's also, it's a big thing to take on in terms of like the psychological part of it and the spiritual part of it. It's a hard thing to wrap your head around, and sometimes people aren't ready at the time that we need them, and that's fine. But oftentimes we have those people come back when they are ready, and that's completely fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh, sorry, that's okay. So goal number 2 is to learn strategies to preserve energy and preserve communicative effectiveness. That's quite wordy. So as I mentioned previously, speech and AAC, they're not mutually exclusive, which means you don't just use one or the other all of a sudden. You don't go from speaking one day to using a device the next day, the very next day.
And not speaking.
And not speaking, exactly. So there's often a time where speech may be used in conjunction with AAC strategies or tools. So the example I have is when your speech rate or clarity has been affected, and now you maybe need a device or a tool to make you better understood when you're communicating with others. You still have your speech, but you're still adapting with some AAC. And that is where the augmentative comes from in our title, Augmentative and Alternative Communication.
So an example of that is you are telling a story to somebody and they've gotten all of it except the one word that makes that joke good or that makes that story make sense. So sometimes that's when you would type out, for instance, what that word is and speak it out loud with an AAC device.
Absolutely. We have lots of tools and devices that we'll use to clarify speech. So you're still communicating, you're still talking, you're still using your speech, but the odd time, maybe you don't have the breath support to be loud enough, or maybe your speech didn't quite come out clear enough because certain sounds are becoming more difficult. And that's when we'll suggest some strategies to support that. So you're still using your speech, but you have some ways to support when your message is understood. Ultimately, our goal as clinicians is to achieve effective communication. And what classifies as effective communication? Essentially, this means the person with ALS gets their intended message across in the least amount of effort. So you'll see the chart I have up on the screen here, varying or comparing effective communication with ineffective communication. The first one saying, minimal communication breakdowns between communicator and partner, message is understood as the communicator or person with ALS has intended. That would be effective communication. Often we see as speech clarity changes that there can be more breakdowns between the person with ALS and their partners, whether those are familiar partners or less familiar partners, it happens. And messages or what they're trying to get across or trying to communicate may or may not be understood as intended. So that's a less effective communication kind of flag. Effective communication is also when minimal to no repetitions are required by the person with ALS that is communicating, versus ineffective communication, which involves multiple repetitions, which may or may not end up with successful results. Obviously, if you're not having to repeat yourself quite as much, it's going to be less fatiguing, and that is a sign of effective communication. Whereas if you're constantly repeating yourself, the message isn't getting across, you've exerted yourself trying to yell or shout the message, that increased fatigue is a mark of ineffective communication. When communication is very effective, there are fewer breakdowns and as a result, less frustration between the person with ALS and his or her partners in comparison to when, that's not the case and frustration builds, which, ends up in its own set of difficulties and challenges, relationship challenges, which we want to try to avoid. And the last one is talking about independence in conversation. So, we always give tools to make sure that you stay independent and stay advocating for yourself and speaking for yourself, whatever modality they may be. If someone notices that they're not participating so much in conversation, or they're relying on their friends and family to speak for them, maybe because it's fatiguing or they're not being understood, well, that's less effective for you as an independent communicator. So we put that in the ineffective communication category. So sometimes these strategies are for the person with ALS, but often they're strategies for the person with ALS and their communication partners. We're not just giving the education to the person with ALS, but also the surrounding circle. I like the analogy. It's like a dance. Your communication is between two people, and you need to work together to achieve effective communication. And ultimately, that's what this school tries to do. Yeah.
So in terms of the frequently asked question, when should I implement AAC? I know we had that in the slide before, but we will often tell people about this, about what ineffective communication looks like, so they know when to come back and when to call us or connect with us to say, I'm ready for the next step, or I'm ready for XYZ. The other thing that we kind of keep an eye out for as well is dexterity. So dexterity is one of these things where we use our hands to write, to type, to use our phone, to be on Facebook, to text. And these are all important ways of communicating as well. So oftentimes we will say that, if you start experiencing these changes, now we need to get back involved, because there are strategies on how to address those limitations.
And our assessments are always ongoing. So, every time we meet with a client, we're asking, how is your speech? How's your breathing? How's your voice? Are you tired? Are you feeling like writing or speaking is labored? And we kind of listen for the red flags or the difficulties that the person may be communicating, so we can decide, whether we should suggest different methods or strategies to support communication, whether that be in writing or in speech, as Nicole was mentioning, the writing piece. Our nurse on the team, Karen, that we're very privileged to have, she does do routine, almost check-ins with our clients, monthly or every couple weeks, whatever the case may be, essentially to check in and see how things are going, so that we can know when to do a reassessment and when to check in next, or what to implement next. Okay, this is a frequently discussed topic, I guess, in our clinic. So this goal says bank or record messages with natural voice for personal or family possession, or for potential use on a speech generating device. This page also refers to what is typically called message banking, if you've heard that term before. And message banking is essentially an audio recording of a person with ALS while their voice is relatively preserved as they speak whole phrases. So these recordings may be used on a computer or a device that they use for communication, also known as a speech generating device, if you've heard that term before. And I actually used one or demonstrated one in the introduction when I introduced myself. So that is an example, even though it's a cell phone, that is a speech generating device because it can speak out loud. So here's an example of my message banking. And remember, this is just a recording of my own voice, just on a different date.
Hi everyone, this is an example of message banking. It is essentially a recording of my natural voice, which I can play back at any time.
A little bit loud.
Sorry, I put the volume on that.
A little bit loud and echoey, but that's okay. We aim for better quality recordings when we do them, but essentially that's what it is. It's just a recording of my natural speech, speaking phrases. So the benefits are obviously that it preserves speech samples long after speech changes occur. And the recorded phrases and sentences sound exactly like my natural voice or the speaker's natural voice and expression. It does a really good job of capturing emotion in your voice, such as the case for sarcasm and phrases of intimacy, where that emotional tone is very important to get the message across as intended.
And we've actually had previous clients record sounds that they typically make, such as a way to call their family. And also calling dogs is a really common one as well. And singing songs and singing or children's books, recording children's books. These are all very common things that people like to record with their own voice.
Many, yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be just phrases. It's just anything unique to that individual that you might want an audio recording of. So yes, whistles, hums, little tunes that they might do regularly. My dad tapping the knife on the side of his plate every morning to the tune of, I don't even know what that song is. It's a childhood song, but I would want that recorded. It's something that's meaningful to me. So it's an audio recording. Many people ask why we don't record single words and just piece them together. And the problem with this is that the phrases sound choppy and unnatural, really. So we do like to do whole phrases for this. Now, obviously, we can't possibly record every phrase anticipated to be used on a device. So that's where my role comes in as the speech language pathologist. I try to guide you into what is important to record and what is maybe less important to record. What, do you want a speech generating device to speak out loud, and what's maybe less important, or sorry, speak out loud with your own voice, and maybe what's less important to be said in your own voice and instead said in a computerized voice, right? I do want to say message banking, if it's going to be considered, should be considered as early as possible to optimize the quality of the recordings. It's a goal. It's also a goal that is often established with family in mind. So people who come into our clinic sometimes don't have message banking as a goal for themselves. They don't want to hear their own voice being played back on a device, which is something to think about. Not all of us like to hear our own voice being played back. But it may be something that the family would like to hear if they are interacting with the person with ALS. And so that's where I say this is a goal that's often established with the family. I don't think I talked about the cons of message banking, which obviously phrases and sentences that were not recorded prior to the speech changes cannot be recorded after significant speech changes have occurred. That is true. So whatever you record while your speech is still intact will be available to be used. Anything afterwards cannot be recorded. A computer will have to generate that speech for you. Such as what you heard at the beginning with my phone.
Yeah. So there's a window of opportunity there.
There is a window of opportunity, and this is only for people who have relatively preserved voice when they come to us for assessment. So it's another reason we do like to have assessment start early. Yep. Goal number 4. So this one is create a voice that resembles my own for use on a speech generating device. So this is similar to message banking, but I'll explain the difference. This is what we refer to as voice banking, and it's also considered for individuals with relatively preserved speech production and voice quality. So voice banking is the process of creating a computerized voice that has characteristics of the user's natural voice. So it's like your own version of Siri or Alexa. It's a combination of your natural speech with a computer. Now the benefits to this is that it can read any text out loud. It doesn't matter if you write that message now or later stages in the disease. The device will speak out in that mixed voice or that voice banked voice. The cons to this, while it's not a perfect representation of the speaker, it does sound quite computerized, and there is typically a fee associated with its use. I wrote $99 US on this slide for the company we typically go through. There are other companies that I know might charge something around there or slightly different. The cons are also that it's quite time consuming. If you want a really good quality voice, it's going to take a lot of recordings. Whereas if you just record a few and put them into the system, it's going to sound more robotic and a lot less, quality, a lot lesser quality. It's also not available for all devices that may be used by the person. So it's a nice idea, and we definitely explore it and we try it with lots of people. Some take to it, some do not. but I will demonstrate what mine sounds like. And please note that this is done with only 350 phrases input into the computer. It would take much more than that to have a better quality voice.
Hi there. Here's an example of voice banking. I recorded 350 phrases using my natural voice. The computer then took characteristics of my natural voice to create a new computerized voice.
So not the best example. I have to sit down and obviously put a few more into that to make it better, but you can pick up on the sharp S sounds that apparently I have in my speech and a couple of the minor voice quality unique characteristics that I have. It is possible to do message banking and voice banking. So for phrases that you have message banked, you can absolutely have a computer read those out. And then for anything new that you didn't have a chance to bank prior to the speech changes, you can use the voice banked voice to read those out rather than a randomized computer voice. I hope that explains it. Those are challenging to explain. Okay, goal number 5 that we typically address is amplification of speech with a device to reduce effort and fatigue. So I touched on this in the effective and ineffective communication slide, talking about how voicing can become effortful at some point in the trajectory of the illness. So this is an option, an augmentative option, I will say, for those who are still speaking, but maybe speech is becoming more effortful. So this is a device that consists of both a microphone and a headset. It's called a voice amplifier. And it also has a connection to a speaker or amplifier. And it's very portable. So this is something that the user would attach to their person, whether it be on a belt or around the neck, though we prefer on the belt. And it's useful for increasing the loudness of speech or volume, but it does not improve speech clarity. So it doesn't make your voice sound any clearer if you do have changes to the understandability of your speech, but it will make it louder so you're not exerting yourself trying to get that message across. We recommend these devices because they help conserve energy when breathing is effortful and voice projection becomes difficult. Like we mentioned before, we do like to take an energy conservation approach. We don't want you to be overexerting yourself if you don't need to. So some examples of when to consider a device like this include when you find yourself saying or thinking some of those phrases on the screen. So my spouse can't hear me, I'm always having to repeat myself. Conversation is exhausting, I feel short of breath. I shut down in noisy environments because nobody hears me. Or we play charades when I'm on the BiPAP machine, and I'm actually glad that one's written there because there are ways to use this device with a BiPAP if you have a special microphone. So it is a consideration. You don't have to play charades when you're on BiPAP. I recently had a client who used this out in the community when the mask was covering their mouth and their speech was not being heard as well as it could be. So what this gentleman did was actually hold the speaker up to I guess the two-way glass now that is everywhere. And the person on the other side of the glass was able to hear it quite well and was quite pleased with that because you're able to put the output wherever you'd like. You're able to put that speaker wherever you'd like so they can hear it.
That is a great current example of how wearing these masks and we're wearing shields, how it muffles your voice and you're already having trouble with projecting your voice. This is a way to decrease that effort because even myself, I know that I am projecting my voice louder every day and it's tiring.
It is, absolutely. And we want, like we always say, we like to try to limit that fatigue as much as possible.
Okay, so the 6th goal that we discuss with our clients is how to get attention. So this kind of segues nicely from voice amplification because, you know, I can only whisper now. So if I can only whisper and my wife is in the kitchen and I'm in the living room, how do I get her attention when I need her? Call bells and alarms are very useful tools, especially in emergency situations. There's nothing more anxiety provoking than being somewhere and needing help when you're physically unable to help yourself and not being able to get someone's attention. I don't know if anybody is familiar with John Costello at Boston Children's Hospital, but he is basically a leader in the field of ALS and AAC, and he will often use this goal as the first goal that he addresses with people because of the anxiety connected to it. So we can use these call bells in many different ways. The emergency way is obviously kind of self-explanatory, but it's also a way of getting somebody's attention to say, finger up or hand up, I've got something to say. This will often avoid repetition of what you've just said, because first off, you have alerted who you're speaking to that, wait a second, I have something to say, so that they can now put their attention on you. Often what happens with some of our clients is that they start talking and inevitably they have to repeat themselves because the first time they spoke, basically notified the person they were talking to that I have something to say, but because they weren't attending to the conversation, they had to get them to repeat it anyhow. So this is a very useful tool in that respect as well. And these call bells can come in many different shapes and sizes. There are really fancy ones that you can get on the internet that you can use without your hands, and it can make a really loud kind of piercing noise. You see the picture in the middle of a man who's laying in bed, and it just looks like a book almost beside his head. There is a button basically beside his head, and if he rotates his head to his right, he will activate an alarm. So he will let somebody know that he needs attention. The way that we often use in our clinic, and it is very inexpensive, you can get these at local hardware stores or Amazon, are wireless doorbells. So the cool thing about these is that the receiver or the doorbell itself stays with the person with ALS. It could clip onto their belt, or it can Velcro onto a wheelchair armrest or underneath an armrest so it's not accidentally hit. It can go in many different places and can be pressed with different body parts depending on what is a repeatable and reliable movement. And then the chime or the bell itself can be placed throughout the home. So this could be in the upstairs, in the downstairs, in the basement. We've actually used this with families who have a caregiver that loves to garden. So one of them is plugged into an outlet outside so that, you know, there's a little bit of freedom for the caregiver to kind of roam about the house and not have that feeling of anxiety of, I don't want to leave my loved one alone because what if they need me? And this is a very common thing that we hear from caregivers, is that, you know what, it can get exhausting. So this is one of the strategies and tools that we help with that, so that, you know, you can get some space from each other. Because let's be honest, when you've, some people that we've seen, they've been married or together a very long time, and they're not used to being around each other all the time. So I think it's good for everyone's mental health for people to get a little bit of privacy and a little bit of space. So this is one of the frequently asked questions that this group had asked, and this is a very easy, inexpensive solution.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but if I come from a big family, so this is a great conversation control sometimes. If you had something to say and, you know, speech is effortful for you, you want to make sure that you're getting your word in. It's a way to say, hey, I have something to add to that, which I could probably even benefit from now.
I'm from Newfoundland originally, and a kitchen party involves everybody talking at the one time.
Oh,
So
yes.
I
Yeah.
would definitely need something like this to say, okay, give me a shot. I mean,
Hold
I've
on.
got something to say here.
I already raised my hand. But
That's right.
So.
And we're always trying to figure out those ways to help keep you in the conversation, because at the end
Absolutely.
of the day, it's about participating and
Mhm.
you know,
You never want to be overlooked. You don't want to be a passive listener in conversation, or at least we don't like to see that, because you don't have a means of communicating,
Yeah.
right? We want to make sure that you're maintaining that active role in conversation.
Okay, so the next goal is around high-tech computer devices. So we throw out these terms, and they're really quite jargony about what high-tech is and what low-tech is. When we say the word tech, we're meaning technology. High means that it's something that's sophisticated in nature, and usually that's around like a smartphone we would call high tech, an iPad, a tablet, a Windows computer, a Apple computer, doesn't really matter. But we also have dedicated devices as well that meet your speech needs and meet your writing needs. Some examples of those are LC Tech or Tobii, GridPad. These are just some examples of equipment or technology that's been purpose-built for augmentative and alternative communication. So what are the different ways that I can use a device? I get this question all the time. So as the occupational therapist, my role is to figure out how can you use it if you're unable to use your hands, essentially. So it's not uncommon that actually the statistic that I saw was that 100% of the time you're going to have a change in physical ability. And it's not unusual for that change in function to start in your feet or start in your hands. And we use our hands for many things, to do the things that we need to do every day, such as, you know, taking care of ourselves, getting dressed and eating, and going to work and doing things we love to do, like tennis and swimming and things like this. So how can I still communicate if I'm unable to touch a computer in order to speak out loud? And there's many different ways that we can do that. Typically, I like to share the ways that I recommend for people with ALS, like specifically. I know that physically with people with ALS, because it's a motor neuron disease, and the motor neurons are the ones that control how to move our bodies. So, you know, the central nervous system controls how these neurons work, which means moving our legs, moving our arms, moving our necks. These are all movements that are controlled through the motor neurons that can be affected by ALS. Not will be, because we can't predict that, because not everybody experiences ALS quite the same. So I've chosen these three methods as the ways that I usually recommend to people because of the disease trajectory and how it impacts your physical ability. So the first one I'm going to show you is called switch scanning. It is a slow method, but reliable. I like to compare it to the K car, and I don't know if you know what the K car is, Leslie,
I do
but
not.
it is a Reliant automobile. So it is the K car of being able to use a speech generating device. The next one is head mouse. Head mouse is my least, is not as preferred as eye gaze for me. And the reason being is because it requires you to move your head. Which involves your neck muscles. And as I said just previously, that these muscles can work right now, but in the future it doesn't work. It is relatively easy to set up, however. Whereas eye gaze requires you to only move your eyes. It is not really that easy to set up. It is kind of technical in nature. So I often will have a conversation with the family and say, do you have any techie people in your family? Is this something that you can see yourself being able to set up easily or not? Often if that's not the case, I don't usually recommend eye gaze. But the reason why I like eye gaze is because of the whole motor neuron thing again, is that our eyes are actually connected straight to our brains. And so our eye movement stays intact. And what I love about that is that if you learn the eye gaze method, you will not have to change from it if we get you up and running. But of course, that's highly contingent on the technical ability to be able to set this up at home.
Mm-hmm.
So what we've done, and I'm glad we did this yesterday because we were fearful of technical difficulties. And of course, being a tech team, we kind of preempted that. And we recorded switch scanning, head, mouse, and eye gaze in use so that you could see it in demonstration. So
you're going to see some of our technology or devices that we use and some of the different ways, as Nicole said, of using those devices without your hands. So the first one is switch scanning. I will say the audio of these videos is very low. So if you can turn up your volumes on the computer as high as they can go, that would be best. I'm not sure why it's so quiet, but so the first one is switch scanning.
So you'll notice that there's a yellow button by my right knee. You'll hear the click.
Switch.
And so that's an example of a speech generating device.
This particular device is called the GridPad Pro 18. Unfortunately, it's not being manufactured anymore, so probably wouldn't prescribe you this.
But it's a like device of what you might see.
Mm-hmm.
And you see she's on a keyboard page, so she's using a keyboard to type, but it's also predicting what she's going to say in that top row there.
So if you can imagine, I am sitting in a wheelchair and I have the ability to reliably and without a lot of effort be able to press my knee out. This could be a method that could be used for somebody who has that ability, that it's a reliable and repeatable movement. But as you can see, it's really quite slow. But if you didn't have a way to communicate using your eyes or using your head, I would gander a guess that you would want something that that works. So I've crafted the message up in the white message window.
And so for a device like this, if you did do message banking or voice banking, we can have that phrase be read out in the option that we discussed.
Mm-hmm.
And we can also have messages stored right onto the device, so you're not typing every single letter of every single word you need to say. If there's common phrases that you may say, you can have them put right into the device, so you can click one or two buttons to actually have it read out. Yeah.
So the next access method is head mouse. I am demonstrating this with just frame, like a set of frames from a pair of glasses actually with sunglasses, I just popped out the lenses. And that's so that I can demonstrate it. But this dot, you see a silver dot in the middle of these glasses, can be put on your head in between your eyes. Some people put it on their nose, on the tip of their nose. Some people will put it on a baseball cap or a headband or something. And essentially that is the sensor that the camera to the right here will pick up. And I'm just going to give you a little demonstration here. How do we go back?
This is called a head mouse. I control it using my head movement. The camera on the computer is connected to the
So I'm not sure if you can see this,
sensor.
but the pointer is moving wherever I move my head.
Glasses. The camera on the computer is connected to the sensor on my glasses.
This device here is called the Tobii i12. We still prescribe this device, and this is what it looks like. There's a bigger version of it too, but this is the smaller one. Oh, thanks. The last access method I want to show you is eye gaze. And I'm demonstrating this on a device called LC Tech Eye Gaze Edge. It uses this camera here to focus on my eyes and where I'm looking. So what you don't see in this video is the calibration that I had to do. So essentially I had to set myself up in front of the camera and focus in on my eye and look at several dots on the screen that go to different areas of the screen. And that is how the camera calibrates to my eye, using my pupil and the glint of light that hits my eye to figure out mathematically where I'm looking on the screen based on those 2 points. Oh, shoot.
Eye gaze technology tracks your eyes across the screen. It clicks. The talks. I stare at. Eye gaze technology tracks your eyes across the screen. It clicks the box I stare at.
So the selection method, that's what we call it, the staring part is called dwell to select. The nice thing about that is that you don't need a body part to click a button. You just have to stare, and we just set the amount of time that you need to stare for before it clicks. So it's great to have all this technology, but how are we going to transport it, or how are we going to use it? Where is it going to be? These are like the transportation considerations that we have. So we can have portable devices like smartphones or just small devices. We will often take into consideration protective cases so that in case you drop it, it doesn't break, or a carry bag. We have done wearable ways so you don't have to hold a device, such as you probably are aware of this. Somebody goes jogging, sometimes you see people with an armband on. We've used those before for people to wear on their forearm, so that their device is kind of already on their arm, and with their other hand, they're able to touch it and speak out loud. We've come up with like lanyards and that kind of thing too. So All of it is very customized to your skills and abilities at the time. We can also mount these devices in different places, and by mounting, it just means the hardware that puts your device in a place and space where it is easily used by you. That can be on a wheelchair, a power chair, a manual chair. For people with ALS, we have put them on lift chairs. These are the sit to stand chairs that ALS Canada often loans to people from the ALS pool. We have used rolling floor stands, so essentially your device becomes portable in terms of you can roll it around and it kind of sits on a stick, for instance. So in case you wanted to use it in the kitchen and in the bedroom and in the living room or outside, these are all different ways that we can put these devices in a place and space.
So one thing that wasn't really mentioned about using these devices is, we do have people who come into the clinic who still do have access of using their hands, but maybe don't have speech at all. And we didn't really need to show that on the screen, but you can also just touch the screen. They are touch screens as well. Obviously, if we're looking at down the road, future potentially needing something like eye gaze, we train early so that you have the skills. But if it's more convenient to use, your fingers to type because you still have very good function of them, then a lot of our clients do that as well.
Yeah, and there's different mice. That's a great point. There's different ways to, there's different mice. There's joysticks and trackballs and track pads. So we can use any type of mouse. It's basically the software is on Windows-based computers, so we can use any type of mouse that you can connect to that. That's a good point, Leslie.
Yeah, and one more thing, because I know we have some potentially nursing or care workers here. There is some etiquette with use of a device like this that I would like to just mention in brief. And it really depends on person to person with ALS. So I do suggest if you're working with somebody with ALS that you talk to them directly about what their preferences are or dispreferences are. But we often see supports or family go around and watch the speaker type their message. Something that you may not have considered, but typing somebody's message or watching somebody type their message could be seen as almost watching their thoughts before speaking. And some people can take it that way or can be very protective of, they want to be independent, using the device, type the message and have it speak out loud when they are ready to present it. So staying on the other side of the speech generating device when possible, unless the person with ALS says otherwise. Is best, and also that gives you the opportunity to keep eye contact with the person you're speaking with. By going around and looking at the device, you're missing out on that eye contact that we so desperately like in conversation. So it's something that's less even thought about. I don't know that people even really think about it or think about the etiquette involved, but there is device etiquette for sure. And like I said, I do recommend you talk to the person with ALS about their preferences with this.
Sometimes it might be appropriate because you're having a private conversation, right? And maybe you don't want to speak out loud, but you want to communicate with that person what you're thinking in that moment. So being beside them is okay. I don't think it's ever good etiquette to stand behind somebody when you are talking to them. You are quite literally talking behind their back. Right? I think more times than not, people want to have a look at you when you're having a conversation.
Just something to consider. So we just went through all this technology, but we know that not everybody is good with technology, and not all solution to communication challenges need to be technology based. So if somebody is out there right now and fearful of all this technology that we're showing, it is okay. We do not have to take a technology based approach. So we do offer what are called low tech or paper based communication options. Such as a board or a book, as you see up in the images there. which can be used independently with your fingers, with a laser pointer, if it's a nice big poster board that's hung on the wall, or with a partner to assist in the scanning process. So you saw that scanning with Nicole's knee before in one of the previous videos where she selected the button with her knee. You can do methods where you use a partner, your communication partner, to be your scanner, and you are the selector as the person with ALS communicating. So the communication book that you see over there on the right, it does have some tabs to help you navigate quickly to the right page as needed. And you can have lots of messages and phrases stored in there, as well as an alphabet board with the letters of the alphabet to generate anything that is not in that book. Those are options as well that we definitely explore. Partner assisted scanning is sometimes used as the only, it can also be a no-tech method where you don't need a book, a board, or a device at all. There are methods where you can communicate just you and a partner using partner assisted scanning methods. So that is where, you know, you're using your eyes to blank yes or no to suggested letters on a board. Yes, it can be slow. It can be very slow. And again, it's like the analogy I said before, it can be like a dance where you and your partner need to get good at this in order for it to be effective and work for you. I have seen some people be very good with a method like that, where they spell letter by letter using only their eyes and having their partner read through the letters. I have seen that be the only strategy people use and do very well with it. I've also heard some feedback that it can be quite challenging. So we try to lead or instruct this early on. And that way it's, you know, less frustrating when it's actually needed. As you saw today, we did have some technical difficulties even getting this started. So it's very possible that even a high-tech device can, you know, break down. And Nicole always says it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. So sometimes people will have these books or boards in addition to a computer so that they're never out of a way of communicating. They always have a way, even if their technology breaks down. So we have on the next slide a video of some of these low-tech or paper-based options, as well as scanning using a partner, so communicating with a partner support.
So, nope. Before we started,
Yeah.
I just want to kind of introduce this a bit. So I'm not sure if people are aware, but there's an SLP by the name of Amy Roman, who is in the United States, and she has a website called Amy and Pals, Pals standing for people with ALS. It is a really great website, a great resource. It's very current. We have used resources from this webpage before, so I just want to make sure that, you know, you guys knew where this came from. And this is a demonstration of many different, more of an overview of the low tech and no tech options, and it's going to do some demonstration. After this is going to take probably like 8 minutes, and I see that we're running over, but we did get started late to defend ourselves. We will take questions that you submitted while we were presenting, or maybe you emailed to Natasha. So I'm just going to get it started here. I'm going to speed it up a bit.
Simple, low-tech communication solutions for people who are unable to speak or have difficulty being understood. The communication methods we will be looking at today include writing with special tools, use of core communication boards, styluses, and laser pointers. Low-tech communication methods are a simple and non-computerized way to communicate.
Oh, sorry.
Oops. 1 second, please.
They could see that. Sorry about that, my bad. All right.
You want this to go away?
Simple, low-tech communication solutions for literate people who are unable to speak or have difficulty being understood. The communication methods we will be looking at today include writing with special tools, use of core communication boards, styluses, and laser pointers. Low-tech communication methods are a simple and non-computerized way to communicate. Having an effective low-tech method for communication is essential to most people who use speech-generating devices. While low-tech methods don't produce speech, they still provide a powerful and flexible way to communicate. They are lightweight, easy to travel with, inexpensive, and easy to learn. They are an important component to a complete communication system. In this video, I'm going to show you a variety of low-tech methods that provide effective communication to people throughout the progression of ALS. These methods are also appropriate for a variety of other diagnoses that affect speech and movement. One important note, these solutions are designed for people who have literacy, so they may not be appropriate for someone who's had a stroke or hasn't learned to read and spell. Low-tech communication systems require both the user and their communication partner to be actively involved in the interaction. The communication partner reads aloud the messages the user is constructing. For people with good arm and hand strength, the simplest method of low-tech communication is a pen and paper. You may want a writing pad in every room, or even consider using an LCD writing board. They are extremely light, inexpensive, and with the press of a button, you can clear the whole page. If gripping the pen becomes difficult, try an extra thick pen or build up a pen with cylindrical foam tubing. If gripping is becoming too difficult, or if your hand fatigues with writing, then you may want to begin using a paper alpha-core board. You simply need to point to words and letters on the board. The alpha-core communication board is made up of the most frequently used words in the English language. This is known as core vocabulary. Instead of selecting each letter, most of the time, you can select the whole word. Thus, communication is faster and requires less physical effort. How to use an alpha-core board. As you point, your partner will say each word or letter aloud. An important tip is to point just below the word so your partner can read it. In addition, don't move to the next word until they have correctly voiced the word you are pointing to.
I would like to go to the S-T-O-R-E store before L-U-N-C-H, lunch. I would like to go to the store before lunch.
At times, people's ability to isolate one finger becomes difficult. Here is an example of a stylus that is made out of PVC pipe, a pencil, and a strip of two-sided Velcro. Using this allows people to point on their communication boards, and it can also be used on a keyboard. Choose a board size that works well for you and your communication partners. If you have difficulties reaching for words around the edges of your board, you may want to choose a smaller board. If you or your communication partner have any visual issues, a bigger board may be preferred. How to use a laser pointer. A laser pointer is a great tool that allows you to reach all areas of a communication board, even with minimal movement. Some people have good wrist control. However, they can't lift their arm. By simply attaching a laser pointer to a band of the hand stylus, they can easily use the alpha-core board again. Even slight movement of a laser pointer can reach across a board. Some may find it difficult to use their hand or arm at all. If a person has even a little ability to move their head, this type of laser pointer can be an outstanding solution. The laser can be attached to a baseball cap, a barrette, or to an eyeglass lens, as shown here. Priscilla is at clinic. She is using a laser pointer attached to her glasses, and a large alpha-core board is attached to the wall. Because the board is big, she can easily communicate with everyone in the room.
How do you feel about the laser?
In order to respond, Priscilla turns on her own laser pointer. To do this, she taps a small, sensitive switch that is creatively placed on her headrest.
I-L-I-K-E, like. Because I am, it is FAST, fast.
Positioning communication boards. There are many options for positioning your communication board. Pictured here is a clip clamp, which attaches a communication board to a wheelchair or bed rail. When setting up any
Oops.
simple, low-tech communication solutions.
I'll get a sec.
For literate people who are unable to speak. That is creatively
L-I-K-E, like
Sorry about that.
this. Because I am, it is FAST, fast.
positioning communication boards. There are many options for positioning your communication board. Pictured here is a clip clamp, which attaches a communication board to a wheelchair or bed rail. When setting up any communication board, be sure that the user can reach all four corners of the communication board. Ozzy, why do you use a low-tech board in addition to your high-tech board, to your high-tech device? It is easier to set up. Easier to set up. I see.
Okay. Thank you, Amy and pals.
Yeah, I'm sorry for disrupting that twice.
Yes.
You really can't touch anything when the video is playing, apparently.
No.
So I guess that's really all that we really wanted to demonstrate to you today.
So you can contact us through Natasha. So if you have any questions about the presentation, or if you have any questions that kind of came up during the presentation, feel free to put those questions in the chat window now, or if you don't quite have a question right now, but we have planted a seed and you have a question later on, Natasha can get those questions to us and we can help direct you to where you can find the answers.
Thank you so much, Nicole and Leslie. I have a few questions here that I received in the chat throughout the presentation, so I'll just share them with you. So the first one is it an option to use someone else's communication device that is not useful anymore? So I guess are there secondhand options?
Yes.
Absolutely. For sure. We do recommend that you have somebody look at what you're doing, or that you're working with a clinic for it, just so you can maximize on its use. And you know, there's lots of tips and tricks that, you know, a clinic occupational therapist or speech therapist might be able to you know, cater right to you and your specific needs. But if you already have a device in possession, absolutely, we would say bring that in and we'll see, you know, that as a trial. Yeah.
And actually, this question kind of makes me smile a little bit because we live in Niagara and it's relatively small. A lot of people know each other, especially in the ALS community. So we will often get the question of, oh, my friend who has ALS is using a phone and I want to use a phone, but people are physically at different points and in terms of communication are at different points. So although that device may have worked for your friend or a loved one or somebody else who just wants to pay it forward, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work. So like Leslie said, it's very important to anchor that decision to use that device with sound clinical reasoning as to why it's going to work for you right now, and how it might work for you in the future.
Yeah, and even settings and you know, tips and tricks about specific devices do need some exploration and training, or you can, you know, the person could benefit from it. So even if it was a good device that would cater to your needs, there's still more to be explored with that. So definitely recommend following up with a clinic, but it's not out of the possibilities. It's definitely not. We have a lot of devices that, you know, that's why we have a leasing pool that move around our
that are recycled. Yeah,
that are recycled, exactly.
Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. That's very helpful for us to know, and also just to keep in mind about following up with the clinic. So the next question we have here is inquiring about speech and communication clinics that are in Ottawa, Ontario.
We can provide a list of the different clinics in Ontario to you, and then you can have that on hand for when people ask, where should I go to get my AAC assessment? And I will send that to you, Natasha, so that you can share that with anyone who asks.
It does require a doctor's referral. So yeah, once you have that doctor's referral, it can go to whatever clinic is closest to you.
Okay, perfect. So the next question we have here is, what's the best eye gaze option for iPad?
So iPads are kind of tricky. iPads in general just improved their accessibility features just this past October. So they don't even have a full year under their belt in terms of being able to connect a mouse alternative to them. We haven't really explored the eye gaze options for iPads since that change because it has been so recent and there were glitches in the beginning of it when it did come down through iOS 13. And then unfortunately the pandemic hit and we got redeployed, so we didn't have a whole lot of time to dedicate to that, and now we're just kind of getting up and running again. But certainly we will look into the eye gaze options. There were none previous to October, but that's not to say that there's not technology out there right now that's just been developed to work with iPad. So there is none according to what I know at present moment, but that's something that we can look into.
Technology is always changing. Really, every day something new comes up, or some new feature or addition has been added to our existing devices. So, you know, we really do our best to keep up with what's current and what's being used and what's successful. And we say now and into the future. So that's where the assessment piece is really important, because you may find something that's working for you right now, which is awesome. But you want to have that clinic assessment to make sure that that's going to be a viable option for the future as well.
Actually, you know what? I am making a liar out of myself, because I just had a recall of John Costello demonstrating the use of eye gaze through the camera on the iPad. At the time, it wasn't very accurate, so I didn't really kind of give too much more into it, but I believe it is an app. You know what? I will look into that and I will share that information with Natasha so that you can pass that along.
Perfect, thank you. And for all the information that Nicole, you and Leslie are sharing, then I'll be able to pass that along to our regional managers, and they will be able to share with the members of our community. Okay, a couple more questions here. We had a viewer who was curious about the best speech generation app for iPhone or iPad.
It really depends on your preferences. We do have a few that we use very often in our clinic. Speech Assistant is one of them because it's very affordable, and it's available on Android and iPhone, iOS platforms. And it's also able to make phone calls. We also have Predictable, and we have Proloquo for text, which is also, you know, a couple other devices that are apps, I should say, for iOS that work quite well as well. They all just do different features, and they come at different price ranges. So that's something that we definitely explore in our clinic as well. But those are three kind of top ones, I guess, that we use. Speech Assistant, Proloquo for text, and Predictable.
Typically, the Speech Assistant, we are typically installing that on people's existing iPads and existing iPhones or existing Android phones. However, with Predictable and Proloquo for text, sometimes what we're doing is we're purchasing the iPad and the app together as a package, and we're putting that funding through the assistive devices program. Yeah.
It really depends on the person. People have different preferences about what they would like, and we explore that in a clinic session, essentially.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, you two. We have one more question, and then I will pass it off to Kim to wrap it up here. So the last question here is, we had a viewer ask, do I need a doctor's referral to get an appointment with Hotel Dieu Shaver?
Yes. Yeah. We are a hospital, and all hospitals, in order to get a referral, needs a doctor's signature. However, if you are connected to the ALS clinic at Hamilton Health Sciences, you can simply call Barbara, the social worker, and express your interest in a referral to us, and she coordinates that. So she gets Dr. Chum or Dr. Turnbull to sign the referral. So she stick handles that, so you don't have to do that on your own.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. We will pass it off to Kim now to wrap us up. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole. And Leslie, this has been so helpful for all of us. If you're not connected with your particular clinic, we will give people the information so they can go to their own clinics. We probably expect a kind of bombarding of people saying, hey, I want to get connected, I want to get organized. I think the examples you shared and some of the information has been so helpful to our clients and anyone else who's listening today. We are first very sorry for the technical issues we had, but it all came together. To the people who are listening, thank you so much for joining us. We are saving this, so if you didn't make it through the whole thing or you missed part of it at the beginning, you can feel free to log on and we will share that. And if there's any outstanding questions, we'll follow up with you as well. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Natasha, for your hospitality. And we are very flattered that we were even asked to speak on this topic. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.